Hello, everyone. I'm Dwayne Bonifer in the Lindsey Wilson University Office of Public Relations, and this is The View from the Hill, the podcast of Lindsey Wilson University. Every week during the academic year, The View from the Hill features conversations with some of the people who help create the dynamic living, learning environment that serves the educational needs of every Lindsey Wilson student every day. In this 11th podcast of the 2025-2026 school year, we'll meet 5 English seniors who are working on their thesis project, all 5 of which are quite interesting and thought-provoking. When the calendar turns to November, college students know that the end of the fall semester is not far off. For 5 seniors in Lindsey Wilson's English department, it means they are nearing the final stages of their thesis project. During the final week of October, the quintet presented their work at what was at least the metaphorical midpoint of the semester. Following their presentations, I caught up with the 5 seniors, along with Professor Rachel Carr, whose English major seminar class is where their work is located. The 5 seniors are Jesse LaGrange from Burkesville, Kentucky, Chloe Taylor from Russell Springs, Kentucky, Zachariah Lawson from Williamsburg, Kentucky, Morgan Bryant from Shelbyville, Kentucky, and Megan Whitson from East Bernstadt, Kentucky. I started off our conversation by asking Professor Carr to explain what a senior English thesis is all about and why students at Lindsey Wilson are asked to write one.
An English senior thesis project is where students are going to interpret a text through close reading and literary analysis and bringing in a theoretical lens to help guide the development of this argument. So they're going to end up with a paper that's 20 to 25 pages long. And then, of course, there are so many academic goals. They're really developing their critical thinking, their writing skills, their analysis. But what I really love about this project is it lets them take all of this really strong academic work and connect it to their passions. So you have students doing these intense analyses of Bluey and the Tale of Peter Rabbit, as you're going to hear from Chloe in a few minutes, and thinking about what is children's media doing and teaching about the values of our society? How do we get to a good functioning democracy through children's lit? And so all of this cool analytical, theoretical scholarship that's also preparing her to go and be an incredible teacher in a high school classroom, or writing these really intense projects on this recent Pulitzer-winning Appalachian text, Demon Copperhead, and pairing it with another Appalachian work, The Book Woman of Troublesome Creek, and then going and being a librarian in Appalachia. Or thinking about going to grad school and developing cool projects on American autobiography and understanding the character of the American dream, and then using this in an English program somewhere. So I'm really thrilled by the way that these students are not only doing such rigorous, amazing academic work, but they're really prepared to take it right out into the world.
I think what impresses me as well is the diversity of the topic. Students literally can talk about anything they want in their thesis. They don't have to go in a certain direction. And I think that's one of the department's strengths. I
think so too. So students do have to revise something that they've already written or show that they can improve and bring and develop out these ideas. But I love how diverse these projects can turn out. Of course, they're revising something that they've already done. I really love, especially just teaching on the American side of things, getting to see what diverse projects we produce. And I get to have fun learning about other things that I haven't taught or studied or talked about in a while. So Jesse's Hemingway project, which I'm very excited to see develop, came out of part of American Lit, but now I get to see how he's expanded it with ideas from modern critical theory. Or Zachariah's project on something I would never get to teach, thinking about how do we read Jewish literature and Palestinian literature together? These are things that are in my subject area, but I get to see them unfold and develop, which is really thrilling. And that we have such diverse strengths in the students and they can play to those on our projects is something that I think makes the major really, really special.
Jesse, let's go over to you now. Let's talk about what your senior thesis project is about.
My project is primarily focused on the works of Hemingway. In fact, it's only focused on the works of Hemingway. In particular, I've chosen 2 texts, a short story called Indian Camp, as well as a novel, Farewell to Arms. My intention with the project is to analyze, in particular, so masculinity and other gender dynamics within those texts, how Hemingway employs structural and narratological elements in order to communicate ideas of masculinity, visions of masculinity. And beyond that, I want to explore how prior criticism has, in my opinion, unjustly conflated Hemingway's biography with what he has written. Oftentimes, the critics, secondary critics, particularly in feminism, will utilize aspects of his biography, the persona of Papa Hemingway, the macho hunter. They'll just call him sexist. I want to look more into the texts without using his biography so much in order to show what I think he really intended, because I think looking at his text in other areas, so for example up in Michigan, I think a lot of the times in his text you see sort of self-awareness, even when you see these sort of toxic behaviors, these violent behaviors, there's a self-awareness. They're not always or typically portrayed as positive things. I don't think that Hemingway sought to encourage the practices you sometimes see within his work. So again, I want to separate the biography from the work, which is something that several of my cited sources have also sought to do, but I seek to expand upon. So hopefully that gives an idea.
Chloe, we talked about a few moments ago the diversity of the topics in these senior theses. You can't get any more diverse or different from Hemingway to the tale of Peter Rabbit and the cartoon phenomenon known as Bluey. Talk a little about your senior thesis.
So my topic is how children's media, specifically, like you said, Peter Rabbit and Bluey, act as a tool for interpolation and impact social forms of agency and citizenship for children. So interpolation basically means that it makes children, it like gives them this idea, like puts it in their head to like shape them to be a specific way. But I chose Bluey because I just really love the show. I feel like that Brum, who's the creator of Bluey, has a really unique way of tackling complex topics. And they do this through play, and that's kind of how they navigate life. So coming into this semester, I wanted to revise my essay from last year, which was about Bluey, and I did that by comparing it with Peter Rabbit. So I think kind of at the core of my argument, it's that children's media is used as a tool for creating future citizens, and the literature and media does this by shaping the social forms of citizenship and agency, for example. So one of the episodes of Bluey I talk about it's called Yoga Ball. I argue that episode teaches self-agency to the kids in the show by having the girls speak up for themselves, because when they were playing, Bingo felt hurt but was unable to express that, and so they practiced like speaking up for themselves. And then in the next season of Bluey, there's an episode called Circus, which is set on voting day, which is why I make the argument that it is constructing them as citizens, where she is able to stand up for a bully, and I argue that she is enacting the role of a citizen who's like protesting to stand up for a power that is abusing them. And then her sister Bluey in that episode is enacting what it means to be a leader. So I feel like that's one of the interesting ways that I'm going about it.
I think what's so interesting about your project is that there's a lot of depth to children's stories. They're more than just fun stories, aren't they?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like what makes children's lit so unique is that it teaches you things in ways that you don't really foresee, and it's kind of discredited a lot as like frivolous, but I mean it's teaching our future generation how to be people, even if it is done like subversively a lot of ways. It's still teaching them, and I feel like that's what's important, because you can kind of dictate how the next generation is going to behave and kind of exist as people through the media that they ingest as kids.
Zachariah, you're dealing with two authors who are not only about 20, 30 years, 40 years apart, but very diverse writers as well, but also very timely in light of what's happening in the world right now. Talk about your thesis project.
Yeah, so my project is centered around Anne Frank and Mahmoud Darwish. Obviously, Anne Frank is a Jew who was impacted by the Holocaust, and Mahmoud Darwish is a Palestinian who has been impacted by the Nakba.
And the Nakba, for those who don't know.
The Nakba is the displacement of over 700,000 Palestinians when they were ran out of the land. And so to put these into conversation with one another has been a little difficult because I want to respect the history that has happened on both sides of the Jews being dehumanized and persecuted, and the same thing with the Palestinians being dehumanized and persecuted. So I want to respect those, but also bring into consideration that literature can help create empathy and see the human in the victim of the dehumanized.
How did you become interested in this topic? But more importantly, how did you become interested in connecting these two very different authors?
So I've always thought it was interesting the way that dehumanization affects people. And in one of my classes, my sophomore year, I was writing on Darwish and his poem Identity Card and the impact that dehumanization had on the Palestinians. And in a different class the same year, I was writing on how the Holocaust impacted and dehumanized Jews. And whenever I had an opportunity to submit to present at Sigma Tau Delta, I thought it would be amazing if I could just bring these two papers together and talk about how, although that, with the conflict going on, and they're still people who are victims of dehumanization. They're still human, and because they have both been dehumanized, I see it as a way that they are both now human, and I'm able to see the impact that they had led to, this literature that has been created. And Anne Frank's diary was not meant to be public, but it has now become public, and we're able to read it, and it's a testimony of the Holocaust. And Darwish's poem is, he's writing to resist this dehumanization and everything that is going on in it.
You're listening to the Lindsey Wilson View from the Hill podcast. I'm Dwayne Bonifer in the Lindsey Wilson University Office of Public Relations. I'm talking to English professor Rachel Carr, along with 5 Lindsey Wilson seniors who are working on their senior thesis in English. The 5 seniors are Jesse LaGrange from Burkesville, Kentucky, Chloe Taylor from Russell Springs, Zachariah Lawson from Williamsburg, Morgan Bryant from Shelbyville, and Megan Whitson from East Bernstadt. You've heard from Jesse, Chloe, and Zachariah. Now let's hear from Megan and Morgan, starting with Megan.
Megan, you are dealing with the subject a little bit closer to home in your senior thesis.
Yes, I am. So I am writing my senior thesis on The Bookwoman of Troublesome Creek by Kim Michelle Richardson and Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. They were written in 2019, or they were published in 2019 and 2022 respectively. And yes, most people who know me know that Appalachia is kind of the core of things that I come back to. Even if something has nothing to do with Appalachia, that's usually what somebody's getting when I write a paper. So it's always something that's been close to home for me because obviously I've lived there my entire life. I've been in Laurel County, Kentucky my entire life, but I didn't, really realize what it means to be Appalachian or what it means to be perceived as Appalachian until I realized that I had an accent, which I've been kind of like one of my characters, very careful to kind of code switch out of in academic circles, but you never realize how you're perceived until you are in this idea of the dominant discourse, the dominant narrative that people so often construct. This idea that Appalachian dialect is not proper, it's not solid English, you're saying things not correctly, but my project really centers on this idea not just of dialect, but also like Zachariah's piece, this idea of dehumanization. And while we always view Appalachia as sort of a classed construct because it's so defined by this cycle of poverty that we've seen throughout the years, it's also a race construct because we see this idea of like poor white trash in Appalachia in the way that you can look at someone and be like, oh, well, they are white trash, but white trash in itself is a raced term. You're not just saying trash, you're not just saying poor, you are saying white trash. So really I'm circling back to these ideas not just of dehumanization and like the signifier of Appalachian accent, as dehumanization, but also how Appalachia in itself is a failure of whiteness, because it fails to reach the standard of what we believe the white American should be. You know, they should be superior, they should be rich, they should have maintained this class mobility, but they have not. And in this way, they're almost made non-white, they are made an other. And I feel like that can be really interesting when thinking about how Appalachia has been so othered, like even more than any other region in America, I would say. So
When you came to Lindsey Wilson as a freshman, were you already interested in themes related to Appalachia? Was that something that developed during your time here?
in a way, I think I really began to think about it the summer of my junior year. I went to the Governor's School for the Arts, and I realized that I was one of the only South Kentucky people there, and I sure sounded like it. But when I got to Lindsey, I was really encouraged by Dr. Robertson during my Writing 2 class, actually, to continue this project of Appalachian dialect and also the Pack Horse Library project during the Great Depression. And it was something that I had kind of heard of but never really delved into. And from Writing Studies 2 on, I mean, that was just it. I was kind of lost after that. But
Morgan, your thesis deals with two novels that are on really separate sides or the far ends of the 20th century, but they deal with a very common theme.
Yes, so my project is actually analyzing two works of fictional American autobiography. First, James Weldon Johnson's The Autobiography of an Ex-Colored Man, which came out in 1912, and Bret Easton Ellis's American Psycho, not the film, the book, that was released in 1991. And what they're both doing in using the fictional American autobiography is that they're they are writing back to this literary tradition of the American autobiography. Like, I'm sure listeners have probably heard of like Benjamin Franklin's autobiography, the multiple iterations of Frederick Douglass's. But what a lot of these like traditional real, in air quotes, autobiographies do is they propose this idea of the American dream. And which is obviously, if for anybody that hasn't heard that, is like the idea of pulling yourself by your bootstraps, through hard work alone, you can become a successful American. What Johnson and Ellis are doing through their fictional works is actually talking back to that idea, saying, no, that idea, that concept, that's not real. Or if it is real, it's not a dream. It's a nightmare, fundamentally a nightmare that is bloody, violent, and not for everyone. Throughout my project, I use multiple different lenses, which is sort of the way you read a book or you watch a movie, such as critical race theory and queer theory. And through this sort of use, it sort of gives me this language to sort of argue that the American dream is fundamentally just a fictitious, horrible, awful, unreal thing. But I think I've especially been sort of playing with this idea since the very beginning, because initially, when I first started this project, that was my main goal, to sort of talk about how the American dream is fake, like point blank period. But then it sort of evolved to talk about how like the idea of being American is fake and how it's a passing performance, especially with using like queer theory and CRT. It's sort of this passing thing that sort of like race, gender, sexuality, that kind of thing. But then sort of after discussing with Dr. Carr, my main mentor, and, multiple people in the English faculty, I could still bring in that original like argument, like, yes, the American dream is fake. And because of that, what it means to be an American is fundamentally fake as well. So sort of throughout my research process, it's sort of been this beautiful evolution of like the American dream, what they're doing, how it's bloody and violent. What does it mean to be American? It's just been this great bowl of soup that I've gotten to sort of eat up this whole semester.
Rachel, former provost and dean of the faculty, Bill Jillian, famously said that Lindsey Wilson's faculty's greatest publications are the students they graduate.
I've never heard that, but I love it.
You have to just be immensely proud every December, every May, when you see these graduates of this caliber, of this quality, walk across the stage and receive their Lindsey Wilson diploma because of what's happened in your all's program.
It is absolutely the best part of my job. And I realized, so this is actually my first time teaching senior seminar, and I was thinking about the 5 students in it who are doing these incredible projects, and I've gotten to teach them for all of them since their freshman year or first year here. So I've really got to see them transform. It just sort of reminds me, like, at its core, the English program empowers students. You've heard them talk all about the work they've done and the skills they've built. And it's just so rewarding to watch them find their voice and find their confidence. But especially because I'm mentoring them in their last year of college as they're about to go out the world, it's so rewarding to watch them find their future too. Especially as, we have these stereotypes about the unemployed English major, what are they going to do or be? And it's so cool for me to see 5 unique pathways going forward that they're all so ready and prepared for, and to see their confidence bloom in their identities and what they have to say, and to know that they have these voices that are so important to share with the world. Yeah, so I'm going to have to start using that Dean Julian quote, that they are absolutely my best work.
That's Lindsey Wilson English professor Rachel Carr. You also heard from the 5 Lindsey Wilson seniors who are working on their English thesis this fall: Jesse LaGrange, Chloe Taylor, Zachariah Lawson, Morgan Bryant, and Megan Whitson. As you might have picked up, Lindsey Wilson's English program is an incredibly strong academic major at the university. It's truly one of the university's star academic programs. And that's going to do it for this 11th edition of The View from the Hill for the 2025-2026 school year. Be sure to encourage your friends, coworkers, family members, associates, and neighbors to subscribe to A View from the Hill. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and on the college's YouTube channel. View from the Hill is produced by Shelby Burton. She's Lindsey Wilson's Assistant Director of Public Relations and Media Producer. And until our next edition, I'm Dwayne Bonifer in the Lindsey Wilson University Office of Public Relations. Thanks so much for listening. So long, everybody, and have a nice day.